Why is the Obama administration completely out of touch? Joining me are Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, author of The Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim patriot's fight to save his faith, and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and Cynthia Farragut, associate fellow at the Middle East Forum and advocacy director at Coptic Solidarity. Thanks for joining me.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having us, Andrew.
Doctor and Cynthia, I'm not here to ask you to trash your faith, but I want to distinguish the difference between the religious freedom and tolerance in the United States and other parts of the world. Here in the United States, a mosque, your mosque, might be on the same street of a Catholic church or a Jewish synagogue. Doctor, in America, we can have faiths occupying the same street without any violence, and if there is violence, we don't tolerate it.
Absolutely. And you know, Andrew, I think one of the main messages that the left thinks that many of us Muslims and others in America seem to miss is that somehow their appeasement, their soft language, that Muslims can't be offended, I view as soft bigotry, veiled bigotry, and that somehow Muslims need to be held to other standards. And yet in the mosque we built in Wisconsin, and I've been involved in so many other mosques around the country and now in Arizona, we expect to be treated no different than any other American citizen, whether Christian, Jewish, atheist, or we know that our Constitution under God, not under one faith, but under God, protects us. And yet these emerging so-called democracies in the Middle East are not being told they're not getting the case for liberty from this president, who I believe it's much more than just he's weak as a commander-in-chief. He is simply missing in action in the war of ideas, and I don't think he knows how to make the case for liberty, because ideologically, I think he's not exactly sold with the American experiment per se, but rather thinks that other collectivist mindsets in which Islamic governance can rule, as we see now happening in Egypt and in Iran, may be viable and deserve as much respect, which many of our families escaped and are actually fighting for and looking for American leadership in the Middle East, which has been vacuous so far.
Cynthia, you know, when we talk about tolerance, a lot of progressives will say, well, Muslims in America are tolerant. Well, they almost have no choice. I mean, it's not like they can do the things that are done in other parts of the world. I judge tolerance not how you act when you're in the minority, but when you're in the majority. If you're a Coptic Christian in the Islamic world, it's a very different take on tolerance.
Certainly. There's no such thing as tolerance in Muslim majority countries. And you know what, Andrew, I think I disagree. I don't even think that there is tolerance because this morning at 9 a.m. I got a threat from someone that claimed to be in New Jersey. Tomorrow, Coptic Solidarity is going to have a protest in front of the UN protesting President Morsi's alliance and support for terrorism in Egypt against religious minorities and against Muslim liberals. So we were hosting a protest tomorrow in front of the UN, and this morning someone calls me claiming that they live in New Jersey, and they said that if we have this protest, Christians in the Middle East are going to get killed. I called the police and I filed a report, because this is a threat of terrorism and genocide, whether it's from an Islamist in Egypt or whether it's from an Islamist in the United States. These are the kind of policies that President Obama has been tolerating unconditionally, and not only that, but also apologizing for their terrorism and for their actions.
Dr. Jasser, let me build on that and something you just said about the case for liberty. I don't care what country it is. If we're giving foreign aid, and it's a mistake to predicate diplomatic relations on giving something to someone to like us, no matter who it is, but if Egypt or any other country is going to expect the American taxpayer, you and I included, to send money to their nation, the president has every right to make its strings attached and to expect, literally expect the government to invest itself in more tolerance, or else lose the money.
Absolutely, Andrew, and I'll tell you that, you know, as a former naval officer, I see and know of so many Americans that have given their lives to try to advance freedom. Not only America's ideas, but every individual, as President Bush used to talk about the ideals that every individual wants the freedom to be free and practice their faith, and yet we aren't defending those, and we're not tying strings to our money. We have to, and I talk about this in my book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, where I say we need to reboot the entire paradigm where we've been helping the oppressors. It was in the Cold War, we were friends with all these dictators, and we can talk about what the reasons were back then. But now, with the Soviet Union gone, that whole paradigm has changed. And in the meantime, they're seeing us as the weak horse. They're now moving in. What's happening in the past few months has not been a coincidence. It's not just about a film. It's about them seeing the leaders of the free world withdrawing, too busy about our elections, no longer defending the free people on the ground, and we have to tie our support to those who are actually the moderates on the ground that are starving to fill that vacuum, but yet nobody's giving them the resources they need. We're too busy telling their oppressors, the Brotherhood and others, that we're going to help them. And I think if you look, for example, today in the speech, President Obama mentioned the mobs and said, well, the vast majority of Muslims don't support that. Well, he didn't connect it to the fact that the entire Organization of Islamic Cooperation told us that we need to fix our First Amendment. The Egyptian ministers and president has said that we need to start punishing the Copts and others who came up with this anti-Islam film. And then not to mention other leaders in the Muslim, so-called Muslim world that drive millions and hundreds of millions giving us lectures about free speech. So the president didn't push back about that at all and is minimizing the problem, I think, in the interest of appearing to be what he's not, which is actually weak.
Cynthia, I'm going to